Hey guys, so in this video I'm going to show you how to add the lady frog. And the lady frog is this one that you can see here walking around on this log. And basically the lady frog appears on only this type of logs, the small ones, and randomly appears on one log. It just walks around on top of the log, and if the frog is able to catch it, it will basically carry the lady frog on its back until it reaches one of the houses. And when the frog reaches one of the houses with the lady frog, he gets 200 extra points. And so that's basically it. So I'm going to show you how to create this. And this involves a lot of stuff. So I'm going to try to make it quick, but also in a way that I can explain all the steps that I did to create the lady frog. So first thing that I did was creating the actor. So I created a new actor, the lady frog, and you can see that I added two different animations, so an idle animation and a move animation. And this is exactly the same as the frog, our frog. So the idle only has one frame, and the move starts with the move frame and then goes back to the idle, so that we can just like trigger the move animation, and since it's not looping, it will end on the stop, the idle one, so we don't need to come back to the idle animation. And I created a new actor, two new animations. Here, actually I didn't update the collisions. I could have done it, but yeah, it's not a problem. And let me see, the physics, yeah, I just selected cannot be pushed. And on the properties, it's already on the actors, and we need to have it on the actor so that we can collide with it with the player. So this is the lady frog actor. And then we need to deal with a few stuff. Like I told you, the lady frog only appears on the small logs. And let me open here the layout. So we need to only appears on the small logs, and it appears randomly on the small logs. So basically what I'm doing, why do I have like so many logs here? Okay, I don't know. So the lady frog only appears on these ones. And I was thinking that if the original game was like this, if it only actually appeared on these logs, but it makes some sense because maybe the large ones, it's easier to catch the lady frog, and on these ones doesn't make sense because if the goal is to take the lady frog to one of the houses, then if you can pick it up from here, it's really easy to just get inside the house because you are almost there. So yeah, it makes sense to only instantiate the lady frog on one of these logs. And so what I'm doing here is, let me show you, not the NPC movement. Yes, the NPC movement, yes. So the first thing that I did was that, okay, I'm going to instantiate the lady frog on the small log. So what I'm doing is, when we reset the position of a log, meaning that a new log will appear on screen, I'm just randomly selecting should I spawn a lady frog or not. Basically, it's that. So first I needed a way to know when the blocks were resetting, and we already have that because it's on the NPC movement. That's where we are resetting the logs. But the NPC movement is being used for everything. So we are using the NPC movement for the logs, the turtles, the cars, everything. So I needed also to have a way to know that this is a log. And so what I did was, first I came here to the NPC movement, and you can see I didn't change anything here. You can see that on the updating I created a new block called reset position because we were calling the reset position on different scenarios. So when we are on one side of the screen, when we are on the other one, or if it starts already outside of the screen, stuff like that. So we were repeating all the code here, and I needed a single place that I could say, okay, is this a log or not? And if this is a log, then I'm going to deal with the lady frog. And so I created a new block called reset position. And on the reset position, basically what I'm doing exactly what we had before. So I'm setting the X position to the initial position, and I'd add this code. And this cell tells us basically if the type of cells, and here you can go to the actors and the properties, the group type, so you can get the type of the actor. So what I'm saying is, if this actor that I'm currently running this on is a log small, which is the one that we want, I'm using this block spawn a lady frog on self. And here, the self I get from, I never know, but it's from the scenes, yes, scenes actor. And basically what I'm doing, I have a custom block, which I'm going to show you. I have a custom block that's going to spawn the lady frog, and I'm giving as a parameter the actual log. So I'm saying, I'm calling this block saying, okay, spawn a lady frog on me, and me, the self that appears there, is the actual log that we are just resetting the position. And you can see that we are not here. It's not here that we are like calculating should we spawn a lady frog or not. Basically, what we are doing, every time a small log resets the position and it's going to appear again, we are calling, okay, spawn a lady frog. And only then I'm going to check should I spawn a lady frog or not. Now, this block is a new custom block that I added on the main scene. So scenes, the main scene, and on the events. And you can see that that's because basically I chose here because that's where we are spawning everything. So we are spawning the logs, we are spawning the cars, the turtles, and now we have a block to spawn the lady frog. And how are we spawning the lady frog? So you can see that we have the block, and now let me break this down. And we have a condition, and we are only spawning the lady frog considering two conditions. So basically, I have an attribute where I'm saving the lady frog, and this is basically to know that we already have a lady frog, because like I told you, we are calling this spawn a lady frog every time a block resets. So it would happen that one of the logs that it is already in the game has a lady frog, and another block would reset, and we would say, okay, spawn a lady frog, and we would spawn another one. So basically what I ended up doing is I created an attribute, which is a lady frog, is an attribute of type actor. And what I'm doing here is that I'm only going to try to spawn a lady frog if this actor doesn't have a value. I meaning that if we don't have a lady frog on screen. And the way to do it is like this. So if lady frog does not have a value, and this has value is from here, attributes, functions, and you have it here. Some attribute has value. And so you don't have a way to, in programming, we have a concept which is a null reference, and a null reference is when you have a variable that doesn't have a value, points to a value that is nothing. And we don't have a null value here, so the only way that we have to check if an actor, like an attribute of type actor is empty, because it's like empty, so that attribute is not pointing to anything, is with this block, so we can check if any attribute has a value or not. So this is what we are doing. So if our attribute lady frog does not have a value, and we have a another condition that basically we are only going to spawn the lady frog in terms of percentage. So we have like half a chance of spawning a lady frog. And this is what I'm doing here. So I'm generating a random float between 0 and 1. And this is not 0, this is 0.5, for example. And this indicates that we have a 50% chance of spawning a lady frog. I had it 0 before because basically I want to show you guys, and I wanted to be sure that every log would have a lady frog, and that's what I was doing. So basically, we are only spawning a lady frog if we don't have a lady frog on screen, and if we have like a 50% chance of spawning a lady frog. So you can just adjust this value to increase the chance or decrease the chance, which it could be something that we could change when creating the progression through the levels, for example. So if these two conditions are true, then we create the lady frog. And you can see that we create a lady frog where we create at the position of the actor. And remember that this actor was the one that we passed here. And this actor is basically the log. So we are creating the lady frog and the same position than the log, which means that the lady frog is going to be positioned here at the beginning of the log, because the position, once again, the positions of the actors are on the top left screen. So we are positioning the lady frog here on this part. And then I'm setting the lady frog, the attribute lady frog to the actor that I just created. And I'm making the lady frog active always, and this is important because basically, since the lady frog appears outside of the screen, we want the actor to be active. So by default, all actors, when are outside the screen, are disabled. So when we want an actor to still behave and still do stuff when it's outside the screen, we need to make sure that they are always active. So we need to add this block. And then I'm just setting the speed of the lady frog, the x speed of the lady frog, to be equal to the x speed of the actor, which is exactly the same way that we are doing with when the frog is being carried by the logs or the turtles. We just we are giving the illusion that the lady frog is being carried by the log, but it's basically moving at the same speed that the log where it's on where the lady frog is at. So this is the code to create the lady frog. And now I remember that I did a whole thing about creating a log list, but I don't need it, so yeah. Okay, so this is creating the lady frog. So this generates a new log. It generates, when it resets the position of a log, it generates a lady frog on top and just moves the lady frog with it. Now what we need to do is to add the code for the lady frog to actually move around in the log. So you could see that the lady frog was just randomly moving on top of the log. And for that, I create a new actor behavior, which I call lady frog. And this has all the logic for the lady frog to walk around. And this has a lot of stuff. It's a frog, destroy. Okay, so let's start here. And let's break down all this code. So basically what I'm doing is when the lady frog is created, I'm gonna try to move the lady frog between, I'm choosing like a random value, and I'm trying to move the lady frog every time this block executes. So I'm waiting for between 1 to 2 seconds. So every 1 to 2 seconds, the lady frog will try to move left or right, or just stays on the same position. And so here, if frog has value, so I'm going to break this down. So here, you can see that I have an attribute frog, and if it has a value or not. And basically, I'm canceling this time block. And this is because we have a frog. I mean, you have an attribute frog, which is an actor. And basically, we attribute this value is going to have this attribute is going to have a value when the frog carries the lady frog. So, like I told you, when the frog is able to pick up the lady frog is going to on his back, and it's just moving around with the frog in the game. So what we want to do here is that as soon as we have a frog, and we're going to see how we get a frog in just a moment. As soon as we have a frog, then we're going to stop moving. We're going to stop moving the lady frog with this block that we had before. So the lady frog is no longer just moving around; it's just following the frog. So basically, what I'm doing here is that as soon as we have a frog, so the lady frog was catched, we just cancel this time block. Otherwise, meaning that the lady frog is still walking around on the log, we do all this. And the way that I did this was I added a new attribute. I added actually 2 new attributes. So we have a position index and we have a movement direction. And what I'm doing here, let me show you. Let me just duplicate this log here. Okay, so what I'm doing here is that the lady frog has 3 different positions that she can be on top of the log. So 0, 1, and 2. Basically, the small log has 3 tiles. So it means that the lady frog can be on each one of these positions. And so I'm doing this position index is basically where she starts, which is 0, then this position is 1, and this position is 2. And I'm using this to know if I can move the lady frog or not, to the left and to the right, because if she's here, then she can only move right. If she's here, can move left and right, and she's here, she can only move left. And so what I'm doing is first, I'm generating a random value between 0 and 2. So it's going to generate a number 0, 1, or 2. And I'm saving that value to the movement direction, which is another attribute that I created. And then what I'm doing is if the movement direction is less than the position index, meaning that if I'm on 0, I'll never be able to move left. So if the movement direction is less than position index, what I'm doing, actually, let me show you like this. So if the movement direction is less than the position index, what I'm doing is I'm moving the lady frog to the left. So, and to move the lady frog to the left, what I do is I point towards minus 90, so I just rotate the lady frog to the left. I actually move it 32 pixels to the left. I switch the animation to move, I switch to frame 0, and I decrement the position index by 1. So basically, this is what we are doing with the frog. So to move the frog, the lady frog to the left, I just point to the left, play the move animation, and actually move the frog one tile to the left. Otherwise, and I'm going to go back to the position index in a minute, but otherwise, if the movement direction is greater than the position index, I do exactly the opposite. So I move the lady frog to the right. So I point to 90, I moved 32 pixels to the right, and I switch the animation and switch to frame and update the position index. Otherwise, meaning that if the movement direction is not less than and greater than the position index, meaning that it's equal to the position index, I just I point the lady frog to a random value, like up or down. Basically, what I'm doing here is that, so yes, up or down. Sorry, now I was thinking, okay, this has a problem, a small problem, but that's all right. So the movement direction can either be 0, 1, or 2. So basically what I'm doing here is that, okay, the lady frog will move left, will move right, or if she stays in the middle, she's going to like keep the direction, moving, looking up, or she's going to like turn to the bottom. And the way that I'm doing this is like I'm pointing towards a certain amount of degrees, and I'm using the random value here. So if the random value, if the moving direction is 0, then the lady frog is going to point up. If it's 1, it's going to point down. And if it's 2, it's going to point up again, because it's 2 times 180, which is 360. It's going to point up again. And so this works. This whole code works. And I can make sure that the lady frog does not step out of the log, because so we have a position index, and the lady frog starts and the position index 0. And I'm going to generate a number between 0 and 2 to move the lady frog. So let's suppose that I generate the number 0. It's exactly the same. So I'm just going to change the position up and down and do not move the lady frog. If the number is 1, which means that it is greater than 0, then the lady frog moves to the left. And if the number is 2, it also moves to the left. So it never happens that the number will be less than 0. So it's not a problem, because the lady frog will never try to move to the left when it's here. Now, if the number is 1, if the lady frog is here, we can generate 0, 1, and 2. And then, if the movement direction is 0, lady frog moves to the left. If it's 1, just change direction up and down. And if it's 2, move to the right. And when the lady frog is here, exactly the same as the beginning. We generate a number between 0, 1, and 2. So we never have a number greater than 2. So the lady frog will never try to step out of the log from the right. It just stays in the same place or moves 1 to the left. And so that's how this code works. We only need to be sure to update the position index here. And so since we have the position index and we are comparing the movement direction with the position index, that's not a problem. The lady frog will never get out of the log. And so this is the code to move the lady frog just randomly on top of the log. Now that we have the lady frog, it's on top of the log. It's like walking on top of the log, but she doesn't actually know about the log or anything. We just like telling the lady frog to move 1 step to the right or to the left according to her position. Now what we need to do is to detect the collision with the frog. And that, what I'm doing, I added a new event on frog collision. And you can see that when self hits a frog, and I'm using an event of actor of type because we only have 1 frog, so that's exactly what we want. And what I'm doing here is I'm pointing, so basically here I reset the rotation and the animation of the lady frog, because she might be looking to the right or looking to the left or down. So basically what I do, okay, when the frog catches the lady frog will just look up. I'm gonna switch animation to idle. So she might be moving or something, so we need to make sure that she has the idle animation. I send the lady frog to the front, and this is in terms of the layers, because let's suppose when we are creating actors, the actors are positioned on layers. And what happens is that if we create the lady frog after the frog, that's not a problem, because the lady frog will for sure be on top of the frog in terms of layers. But since we can create the lady frog and the player dies afterwards, when the player resets and we create a new player, the player will then be on top of the lady frog. So when it carries the lady frog will be on the bottom. So we need to make sure that just bring the lady frog to the top layer, so it's always on top of the frog. And that's what this block does. And this block is from, I think it's from the actors draw. Yeah, the actors draw. You can see like layers here. So send to the back, to the front, back a layer, forward a layer. In this case, I'm just like bringing the lady frog up to the front layer. I don't care if it's one up or one down. And then I'm just saving the value of the frog to the attribute frog. So remember that the first actor in this case is the lady frog, and the actor of type is the frog, and I'm setting the attribute value to actor of type. And this is basically because for stopping this. So as soon as we collide with the frog, when this runs again, it sees that the frog has a value, and so it cancels the lady frog movement. And on the upside, it's where we are going to make look like the lady frog is being carried by the frog. So when we are running this updating, as soon as the frog has value, so as soon as the frog collided with the lady frog, what we are doing, we are just basically setting the position of the lady frog on the X and the Y to be exactly the same as the frog. So, and what this makes, this is running on a loop. So what this makes is that as the frog is moving around, the lady frog is on top of it. So that's how we are creating that illusion. And we also have this this event. I added this event for when an actor leaves a screen, that when the lady frog exits the screen, I destroy the lady frog. And this is basically because if the player is not able to catch the lady frog, the log will get out of the screen, and we need to destroy the lady frog so that we can then create a new one when the time comes. And this destroys lady frog is also an event from the main. And basically what it does is kills the lady frog. And I'm calling this here, and I am not just killing the lady frog on the lady frog actual behavior, because we need to kill the lady frog and also clear the value of lady frog. Because remember that we are using this attribute lady frog to know if we should generate a new one or not. So when we kill the lady frog, we need to just clear the value of this attribute so that the game knows that we no longer have a lady frog on screen. And so I clear the value, and this is also from the function. So just like we can check if an attribute has a value, we can also clear the value of an attribute. Yes, and this is it. So we create the lady frog is walking around, the frog is able to carry the lady frog. Oh, yes, now what we're missing is that, okay, now the frog is carrying the lady frog around, and when the frog reaches one of the houses with the lady frog on the back, he gets 200 points. And so that basically it's on the game manager. That's where we know that the frog reaches one of the houses. No, actually that's not where we know. We know that the frog reaches one of the houses on the house spawner here on the upside, where we call the frog wins, which is when the frog reaches one of the houses. And on the frog wins in the game manager, so we do everything that we need to do. And basically what I did, I added a new block called destroy player, because I was calling this destroy player from several places, and I needed to make sure that I called it only from one place, because I needed to destroy the lady frog before the win. So here I have the win. Sorry, now I made a mistake. Yeah, we were talking about the score. So you can see that here. So the frog wins. This is all houses are occupied. The game end. The level ends. So it's here. we increment score by 50, and here. So if for the last created actor has a lady frog, and this is on the frog collision, so I also added this on the frog collision. Let me just show you. Frog collision. Yes. Yeah, I forgot about this. So the lady frog is detecting collision with the frog to know that if she's being carried or not. And then on the frog collision, I also added a new event. That's basically when the frog collides with the lady frog. So the lady frog is detecting the collision with the frog, and the frog is also detecting collision with the lady frog. And this is basically to set this attribute to true. So I created a new attribute called has lady frog, just to know if the player is carrying the lady frog or not. And I'm doing that here so that in the game manager, I can check when the player wins, when the player reaches one of the houses, I can check, okay, if the player has a lady frog, then I increment the score by 200. That's basically it. And when I destroy the player, I also check the same thing. So if the player has a lady frog, I destroy the lady frog. That's basically it. Let me see here. And here I don't need to know. Yes, and also here I need to do it. So we have to do this on the two different two different locations. And I'm not very happy with this implementation because we are killing the player on two different places. So one is on the game manager, which is destroying the player when the player loses or when the player wins. We are just destroying the player to reset the player again to the beginning. And here we are destroying the lady frog. But also on the frog collision, we have here we call here the destroy of the player, and that happens when we kill the player or when we drown the player. And after we call the frog loses, we also have to check if we have a lady frog. We set the value back to false and also destroy the lady frog. So we need to also do that here. And that's because here destroy player, here I call the destroy player, but I'm also destroying here. So maybe I didn't need this one here. I'm not going to take it right now because it is working, but I'm almost sure that I didn't need to destroy the lady frog here. I only need to set the value to false. But I don't know. I'm not very happy with this implementation because I don't want to be like checking for the lady frog in multiple places, and this is basically happening because I'm calling the destroy on different places. So that's not the best implementation, but it's working, so I'm not gonna mess around with it at this moment. And yes, this is it. This is the code to create the lady frog, move the lady frog around, have the 200 extra points. So yeah, this is it. So on the next video, I'm going to show you how to basically add sound to the game. And yes, we are close to finishing the game. So I'll see you on the next video.